And then what we're gonna do is what we're gonna. So what we're gonna do next? We're gonna do what we need to do. What I'm gonna do is what we're gonna do. What we're gonna do. Yeah, so what we're gonna do. And then What I've done. Baking with Ben. Hi, welcome back to Baking with Ben, the lockdown loaf. This week we're going to be making Hot Cross Buns. Thanks for the comments and things from last week, and thanks for all the people who have been watching, and that's very kind and very nice. And please feel free to carry on commenting and stuff like that, and I'll be happy to reply. Hot Cross Buns. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all the ingredients first, because there are loads of ingredients in Hot Cross Buns. What I've done is I've set all of the ingredients out in the order in which they get put into the bowl. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. Okay, so here, the first thing is we've got flour. So we've got 375 grams of strong white flour. Here, we've got 70 grams of flour. You don't, not flour, here, 70 grams of demerara sugar. It doesn't have to be demerara sugar, it can be other types of sugar. Any kind of sugar you've got, preferably not powdered sugar. Here, we've got 7 grams of fast action yeast. Other yeasts can be used. If you have fresh yeast, that would be 14 grams of fresh yeast. Here, we've got milk, so that's going to go into our bowl. And we have 200 grams of milk, including 1 egg. And that needs to be room temperature before it goes into your bowl. Here, we've got salt. This will be the next thing that goes in. That's 4 grams of salt just there. And here, we have 4 grams of allspice. If you don't have allspice, you can also use 1 gram of cinnamon, 1 gram of nutmeg, 1 gram of clove, 1 gram of cardamom, 1 gram of ginger to make 4 grams. And then here, this is 60 grams of butter, which I'm just browning on the stove gently. So you just put it on like a little medium-high heat, there you go, and just bring it up till it starts to brown, and that's going to add loads of really nice flavour. And then just to bring out some of the flavour of the spices, that's going to go in here with the brown butter, just to get to know each other, just to see what's happening. Okay, so we're going to cook that together, allow the spices to bloom in the butter. We're going to let this cool down before it then goes into our final mix. And then, last but not least, we have 115 grams of currants and raisins. And then we also have 35 grams of candied peel. I made this candied peel myself the other day, because I'm right resourceful like. This guy, he's all peel and no sultana. And what you can do is, if you put in 200 grams of water, 200 grams of sugar, and I cook this lemon peel together, you end up with a syrup and your candy peel. So the syrup will be really good for putting on the top of your hot cross buns at the end, and the candy peel will taste really great inside the hot cross buns. So you've got an internal flavour with your candy peel, an external flavour with your syrup. Just bring out the milk a couple of hours before you're ready to use it, and just let it come up to room temperature, and then obviously, same with the egg. So that's going to go in. And now we're going to mix all this up together. You've seen this before. It's just going to mix until we hydrate all of the flour, and there's no dry bits left in the bowl, okay? So I'm going to go in like this. And you want this to come together into a sort of a shaggy mass. And I like to just flip the dough over, so those dry bits that were at the bottom are now on the top, and you can incorporate those in. Really squidge it between your hands. It's quite a sensorial experience. It feels, with this being an enriched dough, it has a very different feel in the hands, okay? So you want it sort of mixed up so it's something like this. So you can't see any of the dry bits in it, it's just totally like a big clump, okay? A big fistful of dough. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get our scraper, try and get all of that off your hands if you can. There we go. Scrape that little lad into the bowl. With it being an enriched dough, because the fats from the milk and the egg, they're going to inhibit some of the gluten from sticking together. I'm going to be leaving this for about 45 minutes to an hour before I add in the salt, which I've got here. Oh, before I forget, just make sure this little babe's covered, okay? Give it a little cover, like this. So because we've left the salt out, what's happening is all of the yeast that we just put in there has got loads of time to get really nice and active. Dioxide, osmosis, like a super fast cut. Same token as starch molecules create brittleness, the gluten structure. Proteins molecules swell. Right then, that's about 45 minutes up. We're going to go with the salt now, and that's going to go in, and I'm going to just scrunch that between my hands. And this is quite a dry mix actually, so you want to just scrunch this together. You can kind of pick it out of your bowl as well. You want to sort of keep doing this until you can't feel any of the salt in your hands anymore. Oh, it gives you a proper forearm workout. Who needs the gym?
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to knead. I don't usually knead stuff. I just don't knead things. I'm like very minimal. I don't often knead bread because I don't think there's actually a need to knead. With it being a dough with a lot of butter and like eggs and milk, I'm going to need to knead it because I have to work the dough to get the sort of level of gluten development that I want. So I'm going to show you a technique which is a little bit easier than regular kneading. Usually in the books they'll say about 15 minutes of brisk kneading. That's total BS. It's usually like 20 minutes to half an hour.
Okay, so take your dough, whack it onto an unfloured surface. No flour. One of the things that people do is they go, oh, it's not become a thing yet. I need to put loads of flour on it so it becomes like a nice thing like it does on telly. If you add flour to this now, you ruin your bread. So just no flour at all. In fact, kneading is better when there's no flour. So what we're going to do is like a simple old English knead, which is just to push the dough out like that and then bring it back into itself. So it's just push the dough down and bring it back into itself. You don't want to tear the dough too much. You just want to stretch it out, pick it up, and then bring it back in itself. So I'm using the same hand to just press down and bring it out. And I keep working the dough around and just pick it up. Try and pick it up all as one piece with your fingertips, and that's a really good way to stop it from sticking to your hand. So pick it up with one, like as in when I say one piece, I mean get your fingers underneath it like that, and then turn it, and then whack it back down. Stretch out the dough, bring it back to itself. So I'm stretching the dough out, not very far, and then picking it up with those fingers, and then folding it in on itself like that. Okay? So we're going to do this for about 30 seconds. We're just going to bring that round. And in that 30 seconds, you're just introducing a lot of dough to itself, okay? It's nice to be introduced to yourself. Hello, I'm me. I know you are. I'm also you. Like this. And then we're just going to cover this 30 seconds. There we go. Now, in this 30 seconds, the dough is just going to relax. The gluten that we've just introduced into each other is going to start to homogenize. It's going to start to connect and make lovely little connections. And then we're going to rip all those connections apart in a second in a really brutal manner. And then we're going to allow that to happen again. Okay, round two. Flip this back over, so we're still working back into this area. And just keep working it around like that. And eventually it'll start to feel, it's hard to describe, sort of dry and wet at the same time. I know that's really unhelpful. So now this is feeling really good. So flip that over, tuck it underneath itself, pull back on. We'll see what this looks like in about a minute's time. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. It's still feeling quite tight, but let's see. Yeah, it's feeling all right. It's feeling okay, aren't you? Okay. Oh. Okay, so now that we've got a fairly decent bit of gluten strength in here, I'm going to add the butter and the spice mixed together. The French would call it du beurre noisette. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to flatten this dough out. I'm going to spread the butter on, and then we're going to incorporate that into the dough. and it's going to be so luscious. I mean, it's an absolute mess to begin with, but then it becomes really luscious. Okay, I'll show you how we do it. So stretch the dough out. Compress as much as you can. You don't really want to stretch the surface because you'll start ripping it. So just compress into the bench. And this really helps if you have a scraper as well to be able to do this. I'm going to take my spatula and the butter here, and we're just going to get this out. And I reckon just spread it over 2/3 of your dough. So you can. Why bother with a spatula? Let's just use your hands. Let's do that. So just spread it over 2/3 of your dough, leaving this third clear. And then we're going to pick this side up, and that's going to go 1/3 of the way across, like that. So 1/3 of the way across, and then we're going to pick up this bit here, stretch that out a little bit, and then fold that 1/3 of the way across, like that. And then press this down into a rectangle. And you can be fairly rough with it. Just push that down. Always, oh god, every single video I always have something fall directly onto me. Usually it's the camera. Okay, so get the rest of your butter and your spice mix. Let's get as much of it out as you can. I don't like any waste. Just think, why bother making it if you're going to waste it? There's no point, lad. Press this out. You're going to stretch this side, fold that 1/3 of the way across, like this, and then get this side and stretch that 1/3 of the way across, like that. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to just give this another little knead. Now it's going to feel really weird to begin with, because it's all layered up, and it is going to break apart. Don't worry about that, it will come back together. The gluten is still there, it just needs some time to get the butter into it. And the reason we're putting the butter in now is that if we put the butter in earlier on, it would have been an absolute nightmare to build that gluten tension. Okay, so we have our raisins and our sultanas and our chopped peel here. That's going to go in. Similar method. So all we need to do, compress the dough. And you see, just by pushing down, the dough is stretching into the shape that we want. And at this point you can sort of pick up the dough as well as one piece and just use gravity just to like stretch it out. So what we're going to do is going to take a little handful like that and just spread them evenly across 2/3 of your dough here. So what we're going to do is, just to finish that off, I'm just going to work it round into the centre like this until we have something like a nice cohesive ball. We're going to just stick this now in a bowl here, a little bit of oil, brush this around. We're going to leave this for 1 hour to let it prove. See you in an hour. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to perform the first fold on this. So hands sort of straight down into the bowl, pick up your dough as one piece like this. You want your fingers to go right through to the other side and just let the dough hang down either side of your hands like that, and then just dump it back in the bowl, and then turn it 90 degrees, hands back in, and then we're going to leave this for 1 more hour, and then this should be ready to divide. Don't forget to put your lid back on top. We don't want this bad boy to get dry. So they're looking pretty nice. They've risen a little bit, gone about half in volume. We just checked to see if it's nice and bouncy and active, which it is. It's got some bubbles in it as well. Okay, so just give that a light dusting across the top. It's like a light covering of snow. Roll up those sleeves. Okay, so 100 grams, we get 9. So to shape these, really simple. I'm going to press out a little bit of the dough, and then I'm going to select one of these corners. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to stretch it out just a tiny bit, and just push that into the centre. I'm going to turn it a couple of degrees, stretch this out, and then fold that into the centre as well. And I keep working the dough around like this. And it's really important, and I stress this, not to stretch the dough beyond its means. Like, it wants to be stretched a tiny bit, but not very much. Like, if it starts to rip, then you're going too far. And you'll know that it's ripping when it starts to feel really sticky on your fingers when you're pulling the dough out. And make sure that when you're pinning this dough down, you're making sure it sticks, okay? And we keep working the dough around until it wants to roll over. So now it's starting to show me the underside here. So I'm just going to let that roll over like that, okay? And then just to finish that up, I'm just going to put my hand over the dough, and I'm not going to completely crush it. I'm going to create like a cavity or like a well with my hands, and I'm going to work my hand round in a circle, allowing the dough to make contact around each side of my hand. So I'll work that around and just go in one direction. And it's really important to make sure that this always stays at the bottom and this always remains the top now. Okay, so I'm working the dough around. I'll show you what that looks like from this side. So I'm pushing the dough like that, and then I'm pulling it like this, pushing, and then pulling, and pushing, and then pulling. So what I'm doing is I'm creating like a convecting action. So the dough surface from here is working its way round in and up into this seam point, okay? And if you want, you can just pin that seam. So push that seam in and then pin it like that. And push that seam in and then pin it like that, okay? And that's a really useful way of building up a bit of surface tension. And then just roll that round. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to leave these two guys to just chill out for about 45 minutes to an hour. So whilst we're waiting for our dough to proof, what we're going to do is going to make the paste for the hot cross bun crosses. So what I've done is I've mixed equal parts flour and water, and then just added like 15 grams of oil. And then you want something that's sort of like the consistency of that. So I've just been stirring this the back of the spoon. Try and get it nice and smooth. Nothing says the celebration of a man's death and resurrection like some sweet spiced buns. There we go. So once again, we're just going to check the proof. Just give them a little squidge, and you want them to feel supple, like they're not giving as much resistance. To me, they look great. I think they're probably ready to go. So what we'll do, egg wash these now. So get your brush, dab it in some egg wash, and this is gonna give it like a really nice high sheen. I'm just gonna egg wash all the way around, a proper Charlie sheen on these bad boys. This stuff, this goo, we're gonna have to pipe the goo onto our hot crossies. If you don't have a piping bag, which I'm pretty certain, unless you're some sort of pastry chef, in which case you probably don't need to be talking to me, you won't have a piping bag. There are a couple of ways to improvise piping bags. I'm going to use the parchment paper trick. I'll show you what that looks like now. So grab yourself some papier de parchment. So you've got your parchment paper here, and then you want to just roll it up into sort of like a cone situation. So I'm going to roll it up like that. Okay, so let's fill this piping bag. So get your hand right in there and then open up that gap inside and then just pour that in. So you want that to land directly into the middle as well. And you just want to snip the end just to create a little nozzle like that. Just go across the top. And it's good to just allow it to rest on one side and then just slowly bring it across like that. And then press down on the other side, like that. We're also just going to pop a little bit of steam in there, just before I completely forget. Not loads, just a little bit. So, these are ready to go in now. We're going to give these 15-20 minutes, and then we'll bring them out. Okay? In they go. Okay, so that's 15 minutes. Let's check the oven and see what they're looking like. Oh yeah. I think they're pretty much ready to go. These are perhaps a little darker than I'd like them, but they still look great. What we're going to do is we're going to glaze these straight out of the oven so they're still hot. Get plenty of glaze onto your brush, and then just glaze them on like that. Glaze those buns. And I really like to lash it on. Why not? We're celebrating the death and resurrection of some religious guy, so go to town. It's all just some sort of pagan ritual anyway, isn't it? To do with rebirth of life and
The turning of the hands of time.
And because these are hot, as they cool down, they'll soak in this glaze. Oh, yeah. Okay, bottoms up. Good God. So many reasons to love this hot cross bun. It's a one-way ticket to Pleasure Town. They're just the best. Living La Vida, mate. Living La Vida. And that is the glorious majesty of the hot cross bun. Thank you for joining me today and taking part in the tutorial. Join me next week where I think we're going to start making some sourdough bread. Thanks for watching, thanks for commenting and liking and all that sort of business. That's very, very nice. And again, like I said, if you want to ask me any questions, either on Instagram or on YouTube, feel free. I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Great. Thanks very much, and I will see you in the morrow.